Sure. Just to begin, my name is Shawn Ellis. I was a United States Air Force mental health technician and flight medic. I joined the military. Well, I initially joined the military. It's funny enough, I had delayed enlisted before September 11th. And then September 11th happened. So our world quickly changed, and I was joining a fairly peacetime military to a very emergent war situation. But I followed through with my enlistment. Really, I was concerned about educational opportunities. I was a military brat, and I'd been exposed to the military, but I had never really been around the enculturation that goes into seeking higher education. And I thought the military would be a good way for me to, get some money, figure out what I want to do, maybe not waste my parents' dime. And that's why I initially joined.
All right.
Sure. Fortunately enough for me, I'd grown up in a military family, so I was fairly familiar with what might happen. I'd received a little bit of coaching, but I think until you actually experience being in a room with 50 to 60 other people with men and women who are definitely trying to make you uncomfortable, screaming, yelling, being asked to perform physical tasks and using fine motor skills under pressure. It's definitely an experience that most people in their childhood or as young adults, they definitely have never experienced something like that. So I think the shock of asking to perform under pressure and to perform near perfection or at perfection was definitely a shock to my system. For my friends that have joined the Army and Marine Corps, I think the Air Force is a little less stressful, but I think it was more of a mental game, understanding that it's a day-by-day situation. The folks there are there to train me, not to hurt me or kill me, and I think it was really about developing a mental callus, understanding that I'm here for a purpose, and that this is just part of the game. And once I realized psychologically that no harm can come to me, it's all about just understanding that these are the activities for the day, this is what I need to accomplish, and then when I lay my head down at night, I realized that I got paid to work out and become a better student. So it's not so bad.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's crucial. Adversity is important for shaping young people. When we go out into the workforce, I think a lot of times people who've always excelled at something and then they finally run up against a barrier, or maybe they're not necessarily catching on, that ability to say, hey, I can buckle down, apply myself, and manage this situation is important. And I think that's, what DU is trying to cultivate here, and what employers are looking for are people who can deal with adversity and overcome. I think, I had a lot of favorite parts, maybe a few not so favorite parts, but I think one of the biggest things you'll find when you talk to anybody who was in the military and who is now a veteran is that the camaraderie that comes out of those situations, people who have shared a common struggle and an experience. I have friends for life because of that. People that I've deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, people that I've done humanitarian missions with, responding to Hurricane Katrina, for example. Being able to experience society in different ways. People are just going about their business day to day until disaster strikes. And being able to be there, in lockstep with other individuals to support your community is definitely an experience that people rarely ever have. So I definitely value that time that I had in the military, sharing that with people, that common mission and goal.
All right. We'll just pause for a minute here just to see if we've got a tour group coming through, or is it just a... Do you think we're safe with that, Evan?
I think so. I
think we can work around. So the mics aren't picking up some of that, so I think we're close enough mic'd. All right. Sorry for that, Shawn.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. The good stuff. Key differences between life and culture in the military and life and culture in higher education. You spoke some of that in terms of adversity and maybe
Sure.
some resilience, but so as a student in the higher ed culture versus being in the military.
Sure. You know, what's interesting is I've had the great opportunity and pleasure to serve as part of our Veteran Bachelor of Science in Nursing program, bringing medics and corpsmen into our nursing program here at Davenport. And one of the roles that I play often is a mentor to those individuals. I think it's important to understand that the military is a certain type of organization, and higher ed is a completely different type of organization. Transitioning that mindset from, you know, there's a task that needs to be accomplished, we accomplish it. You know, it's very regimented in a lot of ways. There's a lot of there's a direct style of communication, one-way communication, as opposed to dialogue and feedback, let's say, in an academic sense. I think also difference is that, you know, a lot of times folks who are transitioning out of the military, you know, whether they've had 4 years or 30 years in the military, they're used to a certain academic and learning style in the military, and it's much different in the academic center. Essentially, you sit in a classroom and you're briefed, you're given your objectives, and you're told to accomplish them. And there may not necessarily be a lot of leeway in how you accomplish that. There's a certain a culture that's attached to that learning style. You know, transitioning people away from that model and letting them know that collaboration, two-way communication, being accepting and understanding of people with different worldviews. You know, everybody in the military, you're enculturated in the sense of where you're doing the same thing all at the same time. You know, people in a traditional academic setting, you know, people are pursuing different degrees. You know, some of them are still living at home with mom and dad. Some of them have been living on their own for maybe 20 years. And you definitely see that mix in a classroom. So it's been important for me to help those who are transitioning from the military into a traditional academic setting, letting them know that you know, you're going to encounter somebody who's 17, 18 years old who may not have a lot of life experience, and they may actually be looking to you as a leader, which is, it's a nice component, that transition, that leadership ability, you know, letting them know that things may be different, but you can still be a leader and a rising star in this setting, is really helpful for those folks making that transition.
Do you, just to tag on to that, do you think other students who haven't had experience in the military, do they have any difficulties adjusting to military students in the present? In terms of exhibiting that leadership, do you think
Sure.
maybe there's some navigating kind of those, especially I'm thinking group projects, things
Yeah,
like that?
absolutely. You know, I think there's a lot of learning to be done on both sides. I think educating our younger students who have maybe had a traditional educational pathway, you know, sometimes the folks who in the classroom, these veterans may be, you know, close to their parents' age or have a leadership style that reminds them of being parented almost. And so there may be some pushback or some negative feedback that is given that starts this chain of events of misunderstanding. So what I would say to that is that, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a chance to do better on both sides. I think for our young traditional students, them understanding that, you know, maybe this person that they're dealing with has had a different pathway. It's not necessarily worse or better. The way that you interact with individuals. And so there may be some conflict. So understanding that where that person's coming from and what drives their leadership style or even just how they communicate with people, I think is important for our young folks here at the campus. I've had a lot of positive, John. I've had a lot of positive experiences here at DU. I'm fortunate enough in my role to work with faculty and staff in my professional setting and also my student setting. I've been very fortunate that, for example, I was looking for an internship opportunity in a surgical setting because I'm looking to transition maybe back into the military, doing some special operations surgical team work. And currently there hadn't existed a mechanism in place to place undergraduate nursing students in a surgical setting out on the east side of the state. And through cooperation with my associate chair and some other faculty, we were able to kind of search out that opportunity and explore getting students, not just myself, but other interested students into the surgical theater and actually getting in, scrubbing up, learning what a circulating nurse does, what the roles and responsibilities of the anesthesiologist or the registered nurse anesthetist does, actually getting your hands in and having practical nursing experience with a surgical patient. So the faculty have been great about pushing that for me, all simply because I asked the question, which is outstanding. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of institutions I'm not sure, but I suspect students may not necessarily have that latitude to seek out that type of opportunity.
Very good, thank you. Now, on the flip side of that, a story about someone who may have made a negative difference. What did they do, and how did you react to that? How did that make you feel?
John, I can't say that I've had a wholly negative experience here at DU. What I'll say is that I've done a lot of educating staff and faculty on maybe the challenges that military students have. We've already had quite liberal policies in place about people that are deploying or people who may have drill duty or something like that. I think where we've done a lot of work is looking at just cultural interaction. Understanding, certain A-type personalities, maybe the way that people communicate, i.e. the veteran student and the faculty, understanding where that student may be coming from. And it may not be a personal attack, it may not be that the veteran actually means to be so aggressive or assertive in their opinions or beliefs. It's just that they're passionate about it. And they may actually, believe it or not, have quite a bit of experience. And you'll see that with our former medics and corpsmen and nursing courses where they have a lot of practical technical experience. In, say, aerospace medicine where you're flying a patient at 25,000 feet and the faculty has information that contradicts that real-world experience. Teaching those folks to have those conversations, that former medic or corpsman and the faculty member, and understanding like, wow, yeah, you actually are right, but I'm used to teaching at this level and you're way up here. So, bridging that gap. So I think I haven't had a lot of negative experience. It's been about educating and coaching folks on how to communicate better. I would say that just listen. Sometimes people just want to be listened to. You never know what somebody's going through in their day. We all have lives. We all have issues. And I would encourage people not to treat veterans different than any other student. I believe that everybody should be held to a standard regardless of who you are or where you come from. But just listen. And I think that's crucial for anybody. Taking the time to just sit silently and listen to what people have to say. I think veterans have a lot of great experience and knowledge. And a lot of times they're bursting to get it out. And so taking that and funneling it in a way where it's constructive and providing a platform to listen to those ideas, I think that's important.